Hello, I'm your host, Dr. Margie Serrato. I combine my expertise in culture and psychology, as well as personal growth and self help and professional growth, into all of the conversations that I hold and into the way that I help my clients to grow, to heal, and to reach their fullest potential. We want to embrace our whole selves. And part of these conversations on this podcast is bringing all of this together.
Hello, my name is Kalyan Gadam Sethi. My background is about physical and mental and spiritual sciences. I have a background in pharmaceutical industry as well. My hope and intention through this podcast and my work is creating a life of fulfillment and joy for others, and really understanding how to uplift each other, uplift humanity, to bring the fullest potential of what we can achieve on this journey. Thank you, and looking forward.
So make sure to find us on social media, follow us, and connect with us with any questions or any comments that you have about what you learn here today or in any of our other podcasts. Our topic today is, do people undermine their own success when experiencing happiness or joy? So it is possible for individuals to unknowingly self-sabotage due to learned behavior, patterns that stem from trauma, low self-esteem, past relationships, past experiences. And we need to talk about how can these patterns affect personal and work relationships? Is it possible for people to self-sabotage due to these patterns of learned or conditioned responses to trauma or to low self-esteem that affect us in myriad ways in our day-to-day life? So are these habits, are these behaviors, are they conscious or unconscious? So we're going to talk about all of these different things today. We're going to talk about habits. We're going to talk about, I think, the perplexing idea that, well, what do you mean I would self-sabotage when I'm happy or when I'm experiencing joy? So I'm going to have Kalyan lead today with, what do you think when the first time that you thought about how people or yourself self-sabotage when we're experiencing happiness, what comes to mind for you?
And Margie, I think when I was coming to the podcast, I was thinking, okay, this is December, and they're wrapping up the end of the year, right? So it's a lot of reflection about what I have achieved, and what my family has achieved, what my friends have achieved. So togetherness is coming for sure in this time of holiday season. So I'm going to be in a little bit of uplift mood to answer this question. I think one of the things is the when we talk about this self sabotage, or maybe a area of upliftment or joy one person can have in their time of life at a certain point of life, right? You see, like, full of happiness when you are first time dating somebody. You would be like completely lost. You don't know whether you're in a movie theater or you are in a different town. You're constantly thinking about that person. It's like a pure unconditional kind of love or infatuation, whatever you call it, just happens. And that's forming because of your conditional patterns, right? Where your awareness is going all the time, where your thoughts are going all the time. So as much as it feels so much like heart throbbing, and you want to see that person, you want to spend time with that person, right? It's the same thing can happen when you dislike that particular person or that particular work, what you're doing, right? And then you don't want to be in that environment. You don't want to be in that person, near that person, side of that person. So what has worked for you in the past? Why is it not working now, right? And I think part of that is how your awareness has started to kind of feel like versus dislike, in terms of maybe some of those attitudes or some of those things the other person is looking at, or maybe the work which you are doing is offering is not giving you fulfillment, right? There is some gap or noise in your own internal system you can feel, and therefore You try to see a better outlook from that point of view. And therefore, that's the whole reason of why when we talk about self-sabotage, when people need to understand and observe, there were happy moments in people's life, there were sad or depressing moments in life, and it's part of the journey. It's not going to end here today. There in the future also there are going to be moments where you're upset, things are not exactly working, maybe at the age of 60 or 70, right? We don't know. But if you are able to see and ride through those experiences, that self-sabotage will be lesser and lesser, because you are able to understand that you are experientially and enjoying the journey. At the same time, you're not completely connected to that kind of work or moments. You just see it as part of life. You just go through the ride. You are still able to motivate yourself, be with that person, do the things they like, which gives you joy and them joy as well. Do all the things for your family and friends, but at the same time, you're not completely attached to that. So the observer comes in for you and then really uplifts you to get through all conditions. So let me stop here and see if that makes sense from how one can take out the self sabotage from their life.
So I love what you said, and it's making me think of something that we often hear in American culture, right? And in movies, of like this love at first sight, right? We know that there's this period of another word, like you said, it's kind of like unconditional love or whatever. It's called, in psychology, it's called lemerosy. That's that period where just your endorphins are just rushed. Your whole body is experiencing that physiological sense of like happiness and joy and just awe and everything for this person, for this moment, for this relationship that you're in with this person. And it's in a way like there's just such an endorphin rush that your brain doesn't actually work. And I'm saying it kind of like facetiously, of like our brain, our cognitive sense is not as engaged, right? So that goes back to what you just said of, your awareness is just not present in the moment, right? It's just you being carried away by the feelings. And that's a beautiful thing, like to experience that sense of unmitigated happiness and fulfillment and joy and relief and gratification with a person, right? You can think of any number of situations that we've been in life where we've had that feeling, and it's a beautiful, grand sensation. And it's also because of that, the period where there may be a lot of red flags, but you do not see the flags at all, right? Because that's not what is engaged in the moment, when you're thinking of the relation. And the other side of that is when you do also begin to, that state of lemerosy kind of dissipates a little bit, right? And you then start, your cognitive brain is starting to engage. And that's when you start thinking, ooh, I don't know about this habit of this person. The person always had the habit. The person always had the things, like ever since you met them. But now you're starting to think through, is that something that I can deal with? It could be any number of things. It could be the way that they talk. It could be things that they say. It could be opinions that they have. It could be any number of things, right? And that's at the point where we start kind of a little bit self-sabotage. This might be a perfectly great person. That feeling of lemerosy might be gone, but that doesn't mean that the person isn't a good fit for you. That's actually the point where we need to start kind of engaging even more conscious thinking and going, is this habit really that important to me? What is it about this person that captured my attention to begin with? That's the thing that drew me to them. That's the thing that drew to these feelings that I had. What is important about that? And does that have more value in the relationship that I want to have versus the nitpicking and the little things, right? Nobody's perfect. We're not perfect. So to start picking apart like all of the things that feel like, oh no, I don't like that about that person, right? Just becomes this place where things are so good and we self-sabotage by fixating on all of the bad stuff, all of the things that suddenly no longer feel, I don't say aligned, but certainly don't feel like it's something that we can work with. And it's really interesting. We have this perception too of relationships being like a forever thing, whether it's the first time and you just fall in love and you want to be love at first sight, and you have that sense of also grief and grieving when you realize, oh, maybe that wasn't the person. But I like the idea of it. I like the idea of like love at first sight and being, that's it, one person forever. Man, that would make it easy, because then I don't have to deal with other relationships. Right? I don't have to go through the challenge of meeting somebody else. But that's how we learn about ourselves, is through relationships, through being in relationship with other people. Is how we learn what matters to us. But we have romanticized the love at first sight thing, and so we get carried away with like what this means or what it doesn't mean. So I love that, because it just immediately made me think of like that moment of just pure unrelenting just love and everything for a person, and how we can self-sabotage once we come down from that emotional high, let's say.
And I think it's a good segue to talk about you touched on the concept of the idea, right? Like idea of understanding that, oh, I'm in love, and very few people even realize that they're in love. Like they just carried away with that whole environment taking over them, right? And such a beautiful thing. And it can happen with work as well. You're a great scientist, you're an inventor, you're just completely in that dark room trying to find something, and every day working on that experiment, right? So it can happen with anything, and that's the part I'm trying to explain to the listeners here. It's the nature of awareness which exists in each one of us, which exists in all the 7 billion people and all the animals, all the plants, is that it has strong sense of attachment. And that if you can really tap into the dimension and understand, I am awareness and I can be attached to something. There is no other way to live in this life without attachment. It has to be some attachment. Now the only thing is, if are you observing the attachment happening, or you are just getting attached to randomly when things come your way. Right?
I love that. It's making me think of the difference between an anxious attachment, right, or a conscious attachment. We often, when we think about relationships and who we want to be, and this actually very much relates to work. What is the idea of the kind of job that we want to have when we apply for a job, versus maybe the reality of what that job is, right? Your job description when you apply for a job is not going to be exact to what the actual job entails. And so if you get fixated on, well, the job description was this, and I'm doing things that are not that, or I'm not doing the job as it was described, or I'm doing more work, or I'm doing different kinds of work. And so there's this connection from the idea of what you thought this was going to be versus like what the job actually entails. So you can also self-sabotage in that kind of, work environment and relationships with others as well. If you feel like you got the job and you're so excited to be working and to have this opportunity, but then suddenly like you're fixating on all the things that are not the way that you thought, the idea of the job versus the reality day-to-day of the job, is, I feel like applies to in the relationship aspect for sure.
And I think we are in this fantastic age of the humanity and world. We really want to make sure that we live in higher consciousness, right? And what I mean by that is, we need to understand, as boys and girls, men and women, that these ideas which come in are very profound, very important. And the idea just could be like, oh, I'm gonna go for tonight to this restaurant. You are making that conscious choice, right? Are you? Is that idea is repetitive? Like you have gone to a restaurant, so your subconscious is pulling and saying that it has worked very well for us. We had a great time. Kids had a great time. They enjoyed this particular dish. So let's just go to the same restaurant. Or is it an idea that let's innovate? Maybe let's find a new Italian restaurant, nearby. Let's try and give a chance. So every time there is a choice you have to make, and that's an idea, right? When I first saw that growing up, the Nokia cell phone used to have that the power of idea can change the world. That's what they used to have a caption. An idea can change the world, to be exact. So it is important to understand that every day, every half an hour, maybe right after this meeting, right after the next, before the next meeting, you have to prepare your mind, slow down your the rush of energy going in your brain. Let the ideas soak in. Couple of ideas, like what are you going to talk about, who are the audience, is it gonna give me the information what I need from this meeting, right? So these are some of the things people need to be prepared, and that is exactly what you're gonna be talking, right? Because you are well prepared for it. So when I one of the things I watched in the master class the other day was David Lynch. He's from 1960s 70s, a great creative film director, and he talked about of an idea is like something like you put a bait and then you lower the your hook, fish hook, and then you take it all the way water, and then you just wait patiently, and sooner or later the fish comes in and takes the bait, and you don't know when you're taking out the fish from the water. You don't know what fish it is, what scales it has, what is the color of the fish. You don't know anything about that idea, which is the fish. So you got to be patient enough to take that idea and sink into your consciousness, so that eventually you're gonna be able to generate more thoughts around that idea, more school of fishes around that idea. You can drop that fish again back into the ocean, and then have more fishes collectively gather around that fish, so that you are generating a great brainstorming, great thought of ideas. So I know it sounds like very who people may think like, who would have that much of time, daydreaming or something. But it is imperative in this age and world that as we talk about work life balance, as we talk about mental health, it is important to understand that every opportunity you have to create that idea generation is a breath of fresh air, is a breath of new life. It can take you into a different field of opportunities. It can open up the new dimension for you to enhance your levels of fulfillment and joy and creativity, whatever it comes along with that. And I think that's important, what when David Lynch mentioned that. And what I also observed that is that, why did my consciousness, it just got attached to David Lynch's idea of catching an idea, right? It's important to understand that a lot of people are watching it. Why did only my consciousness get there? Unless I slow down and think that, okay, my subconscious, my senses have tried to understand and catch something there. And if everyone has that ideas within themselves to be able to slow down and catch that, I think life becomes much more meaningful for them, everyone.
Hmm. The other thing it made me think of as well, when we were talking about relationships, was in the same sense of like the anxious attachment versus a conscious attachment. It's a difference. Sometimes we're so unaware of like, what is it that our soul is seeking, right? And we have a cognitive idea of the kind of person that we're seeking, but what our body might be seeking, what our emotions might be seeking, might be different. And sometimes that's because of trauma. It's something that's familiar that we haven't necessarily become aware of. And we have, again, this idea as well of like, I want somebody to complete me. It's like, no, you are whole and complete on your own. You want somebody to complement you, not to complete you. It is not somebody else's job to fill a void in your life, a perceived void, right? You have to either figure out what is the void about, what is it that you need to give to yourself, or, which is more than likely, it's a little bit of both, but the other part of that is recognizing that you are whole on your own. You don't need somebody else to make you complete, right? And I feel like that's, such a big part of what you and I talk about is that sense of like, what is your whole self? It's bringing your whole self, is bringing a sense of wholeness to who you are, and also expressing the wholeness of who you are in everything that you do, right? So it's the understanding, but also it's the action of being all of you, right? And how that matters. And I feel like one of the ways in which we often self-sabotage is by not recognizing that it matters for us to be everything that we are, that it matters to express all of the different parts of us. And we self-sabotage because we think that if we show all parts of who we are, it makes us vulnerable, because either somebody else is not going to like it, or somebody else is going to find it weird, or somebody else is, you're constantly thinking about, how are other people going to perceive who I am, or how I am, how I act, the things that I like, whatever the case may be, versus I have to be good with everything that I like, because that makes me who I am. And it is okay for me to express all of that. And if somebody else doesn't like it, it's really not my problem. and I'm saying it in the way of like, we are always mitigating risk, and we're always mitigating. So for example, in the work environment, yeah, there are things that, that you may not be able to fully express in a work environment, whether that's political views or whether that any number of things, right? But at the end of the day, all of you has to be expressed in some way. Maybe not all of you has to be expressed at work, but the fullness of who you are requires attention and requires for you to give it life in some way. So you have to find outlets for that, right? And it can be in relationship with others when you do that. It's just in different contexts. I feel like so that sparked something in you. What was that?
No, I think it sparked me an expression of joy, expression of humans, and it is so, it's so beautiful to watch. We enjoy colors of apples, we enjoy colors of gems, or colors of clothes, colors of things a little girl puts on her head, right? Different kind of decorative items. But we sometimes don't enjoy the colors of humans. I think that's that's inherent bias in people. Um, Number one, that needs to go away from the world, right? And a lot of work is being done. But going back to the expression of it, if you are completely conscious of your way of your mindset in terms of whether you're going through a tough period or a period of extreme happiness and everything working out for you. Both times, if you can balance your mindset, you're not getting carried away by the riches, or you get not getting carried away by the downfalls. What I mean by that is, each one of us, whether you are a 20-year-old or 30-year-old or something, you are looking for betterment in life, right? So this morning I was driving in my electric car, and I was thinking, I had a Toyota which was 2000 second hand when I was a student or something. Can I drive that car now? How would it make me feel? Well, again, I just have to be okay that if I have no car and if I have to go back to that old car, I should be willing to go down and do that. I'm not walking, I'm still having a car. you know I think why should we think like that is because of gratitude. I just, two hands, two legs, everything working well. It's wonderful thing to be alive and aware, right? So the second thing I want to tell you a small story here. The other day, as usual, 4:30 I wake up. This time I did not go to the gym because I had to charge my electric car, and I usually go at 4:30 in the morning because I thought there is not much queue or line there. And there was one guy charging, and it was the slowest charger, 30 kilowatts per hour. And he's from Netherlands. He has a business trip and he has to charge the car. And I'm just waiting because there is only one charger. Every charger is broken down, and I had to wait like an hour. So 5:30, 5:45, finally, and I had to nature calls. I had to go to the restroom. There is no restroom in the place. The next restroom is 15 minutes walk. So I keep telling, of course, there is a sense of the mind says that, okay, you're in an uncomfortable state, right? And then I look at the stars and sky and open sky, and I'm like, well, things will pass away. Again, there will be, a nice smell of roses or whatever you can think of. The sun will shine. So what's going to happen? Patiently waiting. The guy comes in, or actually, the guy leaves, and I charge the car. 6 o'clock. My kid's school is 6:30. So I've already waited 1.5 hour, 2 hours just for charging a car, and the slowest charger. Walked 15 minutes to the restroom, again in the cold 28 degrees Fahrenheit, and then come back 15 minutes. And every moment was going through, I know that there is a sense of uncomfortability coming in, but I tried to show resilience because I know my hands are freezing cold, I have to fold it. But the point is, there are a lot of people, don't have this kind of luxury or facilities I'm enjoying. So it's ability to understand the gratitude, and things will pass away and it will always be okay. So the reason I'm bringing that up is because there will be times, tough times for all of us we have to face, whether it's losing a relationship, whether it is losing a job, whether it is losing a friend, whether it's even losing a loved one because of death or something. You have to show resilience in that, because it's not only if it affects you, you should not feel bad. If it affects somebody else, you should understand somebody else suffering too, and then feel the pain of it. I mean, you don't have to go crazy about it and lose everything, but at least if you have a sense of suffering and feeling the pain, then you can understand how to help them out. And part of the work what we do, Margie, is that's exactly what we're trying to do here, right? And myself is to understand how we can uplift each other, how to simply define how to observe your life better, how to not get attached to too many things, how to have a focused life, um, but still enjoy the things which life offers, right? Whether it's offering you a job, a car, house, and everything, you're still enjoying them. You're not like getting away from that and behaving like a saint and losing all that and living somewhere else. You're still enjoying the parts of the things, but you're not attached to them. You are just riding the wave and then simply going along with your life.
I love that. It's making me think of a few things. This morning I was listening. So in Positive Intelligence, this mental fitness program that I facilitate, there's like a daily, kind of focus. And this morning the topic was being aware of mental disease. So he is a play on the word disease as in dis-ease. When are you uncomfortable? When are you experiencing discomfort? And is that discomfort really worth all of the mental and emotional energy that we expend on focusing on that, right? And so he gave this great example of, I'm at this week-long retreat and there's plentiful food and I had to wait in line. It was the 5th day. I was all the meditation and, all of this beautiful surroundings, everything was perfect. But I found myself focused on the waiting. There's all this food. I wasn't that hungry anyway. But it's the bringing awareness to what is the ongoing kind of messaging in my mind, right? What is the thought that keeps circulating? What are the other thoughts that are circulating along with it? And being able to make that conscious choice of, this is insignificant in the grand scheme of my life, what I have, what I've accomplished, who I will become. It is nothing. But there's a lot of also cultural messages around time is money, and we have to recognize that the mental clutter, right, is very much a manifestation of the things that we hear, the things that we learn, right, and being able to separate those things, right, and recognizing, yes, I hear that. Yes, there are times when, I say these things myself, but in this moment, I can look at the bigger picture. In this moment, I can choose to focus on what actually matters. In this moment, I could choose to not self-sabotage my joy and happiness because I don't need to, right? And being able to hold space for both of those things, the discomfort, as well as I can choose to focus on something else. I can choose to practice gratitude. I can choose to just, practice on mindfulness, whatever that is. Like the ability to be able to hold two seemingly opposing views or feelings is part of the awareness and that higher self, right? That we're trying to reach, right? To recognize that this is part of being human, and that is okay. I can also choose to be above these small, mundane, insignificant things, and not self-sabotage my joy in the process, right? So I love that the way that he played on the word of like mental dis-ease, because that's where a lot of us spend so much time is in our heads and all of that mental clutter. The other thing too is I have a counter example to what you just said on your car, because you're right. I can think of like I have listen. Don't, and I know you're not going to judge. My dream car, I've inched my way over to it. I always wanted a minivan. I finally got a minivan this year. I'm so happy. It's spacious, it's comfortable, it's awesome. But my very first car was a Ford Tempo, and it had no air conditioner, and I lived in Florida. It also had no heater when I lived in Georgia, and there was like snow and everything. So, it's like, but it got me places. And I was so grateful and so happy to have my car. The car was not much, but to me, it symbolized freedom. To me, it meant I get to go to the places that I want by myself without relying on somebody else. It meant independence. And now I can think about that and go, well, what would I do if I, had to go back to that? I was like, I'd figure it out, right? That's just, yes, it's nice to have the comforts in life that we have earned and worked for. But also there are worse things in life than not having a car. And yes, it's uncomfortable, but it's okay. The counter example is I've recently got a very nice gift, and it was really interesting how it made my mind work here. The gift was a pair of shoes. I love shoes, sparkly shoes. When I competed in Mrs. Ohio this year, that was one of the things that I absolutely love. And I was like, I can wear all the sparkly stuff, the glittery things, the high heels. I love that. I love glamming up, and it just makes me feel like I'm shining my light in a way that feels very aligned with my energy. It's just the outward expression of that. And I think I've just been in this mindset of like still being almost like a graduate student of like this money mindset around scarcity. And this also, we talked about how some of these patterns stem from trauma. 5 years ago, I was physically assaulted at my job, and I lost my job. So I had everything. I had a great salary. I had a great title. I had a great job, and I lost everything. And since then, there is something that just got triggered around unworthiness and finances. They were coupled in a way that I've been aware of it, but I didn't. I'm always learning the layers to all of this. And so the thing with the shoes is, it was a pair of Christian Louboutin, which are very pricey shoes. And I would say I would have never spent the money that those shoes cost. And yet when I put them on, I understood. It's kind of like when you go from being a student and only drinking $10 bottles of cheap wine, and then you have your first $100 bottle of wine, and you recognize there's a reason why it costs that much. Your senses notice the difference in the quality, the taste, the smell, the aroma, it just dawns on you like, oh, I've been here in this place having these experiences because I thought that I couldn't afford more, or that I wasn't allowed to enjoy something so lavish, right? And so for me, it was this recognition of, ooh, I immediately in my head, I didn't buy the shoes, but in my head, my first thought was, I would never spend that much money on shoes. And it was really interesting because that's my conditioning. That's what we learn about being wasteful. That's what we learn about, you know, that's the humility. That's what we learn around, people who are superficial. We have all of this angst about the things that we are supposed to or allowed to, that are socially acceptable for us to spend money on, and that comes from culture. And it just made me recognize, like, wow, I still have a lot of work to do on this subject, because it wasn't just I would never. It was just like this very like visceral kind of feeling in me of I would never, and it was two part. It was I would never spend that much money on shoes because it seems superficial. But there was also the lurking thing underneath, which was I don't deserve to spend that much money on shoes. And that's the thing that caught me. And I thought, oh, there is a unworthiness issue that is underneath so much of this other stuff, junk, that I've been working through and trying to overcome. And that matters. It matters for us to have awareness around that so that we can then deconstruct it and unlearn it, right? Shining a light on these dark parts, on these shadows that we are not aware of, so that we can look at it, face it, confront it, and then consciously decide, what is true about that? Is that how I want to continue feeling? What did I learn? What is true about that? And how do I want to, what is the choice that I want to make about this, right? Do I want to keep believing that? Does it make sense to? No? Okay. So what is the alternative belief that I want to take place?
I know. I think it's. I like the way you covered both sides of the coin. I know how we think, and that's where I think oneself as one human being, we need to maximize the self-expression of whatever it takes to the limits, right? And that's my hope, really, that we face our fears, and we may have patterns of people, things, and environment we are always looking into, and we are comfortable with those patterns. Every day we see that person, we go that place, we eat that food, and we kind of find some kind of comfort and happiness to it. And then can we break out of that comfortness? Can we can we chase our dreams? And can we, like, this is like this thing, the song in Moana, right? I hope people can talk to Moana, because in that movie, like, the director is showing, right, like the little kid always looks at the edge of the water, and then, can I cross this water? What happens? What is beyond that? That's where we need to go. I know that it seems so uncomfortable, people are afraid, but if we can touch that edge, that's where freedom is. The freedom and liberation is at the edge and over the edge of what we create. So I think once we, to make it easier for the listeners, and people have asked me, those who have listened to our podcast, like, how do we go from, there are moments which are like, I can't do better than this. Like, I'm stuck in this relationship, or I'm stuck in this deep suffering. How can I get out of it? How can I make myself liberated out of it? So my point of view is that the first question is you have to ask is, are you really witnessing the current moment? Do you have understanding of what is now? I mean, the if there is a deeper understanding of what is now, and there is no past, no future, and you are completely understanding this is it right now, this is all you got in the eternity of the whole universe, this is all you got. And then you make every moment in the now, and create that moment how you want to be created. And slowly and surely your dreams will come true, and you're uncomfortable, whatever you're uncomfortable, you will be able to chase that, right? And then that becomes you, that becomes the new you. I have seen that, and one of the reasons, Margie, that this, the reason why we have a lot of these movie stars and celebrities have done fantastic characters, fantastic portray of imagination, just because they've tested the imagination, they've tested the limits of their imagination and went beyond that, right? And that's where we see that nice sparkles of dresses and shoes and celebrities, but inherently they worked hard. Some of them work day in and out of maintaining their body, their diet, their positive thought pattern, because it's not easy. It's not easy to be consistently be happy, right? All the time be happy, and that can only come with practice. So one of the things, that's what I want listeners to leave the message is that no matter whatever happens, let's not the smile from your face, let's not fade away that smile. Continue that act of catching an idea that you remember. And in psychology and in also in spirituality, that's exactly the point they say, is that can your awareness, again I'm going to repeat slowly, can your awareness remember itself? Can that means awareness, being aware of itself. It is essentially flipping the making completely be conscious and understanding. You're taking your focus from the object of attention away, and then you are completely, flipping inside and then going towards your intuition. So if you can do that, then every scene what you're doing, whether you're watching a scene here, whether you're in this room, wherever you are, this is all part of the movie show which you are enjoying, and you're not completely immersed as a character and trying to suffer into that character's loss or wins. It may sound so scientific fiction kind of movie kind of thing, but that's how the awareness works. That if you can understand the nature of how awareness works and not completely get attached to the portrait of character, then you can absolutely ride the movie and enjoy the show in your life.
It brought up two things for me. One of them is, you've probably heard this, but there's a saying that says, yesterday is history, the future is a mystery, today is a gift. That's why it's called a present, the present. And it's, we expend so much energy thinking about what the future implications of something is, of our actions, of somebody else's actions. You don't know what those are. It's all speculation. It's all, you think you are, because we're using past experiences to fill in the gap of the things that we don't know are coming. We spend too much energy creating all of these different scenarios of what could happen, but we don't know what will happen. There are a lot of different things that are possible that can happen. What is the point of expending all of this energy? And I used to be like that, because I used to think I need to be, 10 steps ahead and make sure that I have all of the possibilities laid out so that I feel prepared. But all that was doing was just sucking the energy and the life force out of me, fixating on all of these potentials that they may never come to pass. Especially because we make a lot of assumptions too when it comes to situations, and especially people, about what they are thinking or why they're doing things, whether their motives, and we are more than likely completely off. We might be right, but even if we are, that person can choose differently. Even if their motive, or even if their intention of something they said or did was exactly what you thought, they can still choose to act differently, right? That you have no control over that. So what is the point of expending all of this time and energy into this, futile exercise? You cannot control the future. You cannot control the outcomes. So just let it go. And then another thing that we do, and I'm definitely guilty of this, in some things, not in everything, but when it comes to my own self-judgment, and this is a way that we self-sabotage, is it's easier to forgive others or to see things from other people's perspective, and it's really hard to be compassionate with ourselves. It takes a lot of practice to give ourselves the grace and compassion and love and forgiveness that we more readily give to others. So that's one that there's a lot of that energy that needs to be reinvested in yourself. And so What's the point of carrying all of the emotional baggage and the weight and the judgment of everything that happened that you also have no control over, because it's done. It's done. Don't keep carrying that emotional baggage with that compounding interest. Don't keep dragging that into your future, because that's a choice that you have today to let go of that, to start today in this very moment anew, making better, different choices today, right in this moment. Not the stuff yesterday, not the things that you can't control yet for tomorrow. Today. What can you do today? What can you give yourself today? I'm feeling like I'm really my soul is really staying with this message right now, because it's something that's been heavy for me recently to recognize that I self-sabotage in that way, by dragging the past of what I've done or haven't done or how I could have done differently into every day, and that is not helping me. That's hurting me. Ultimately, that's how we hurt ourselves and rob ourselves of our own joy, is by doing that to ourselves. And it's something that it's confronting, because we end up being the directors of our own suffering, or lack thereof. We get to choose, right? So if you've been suffering, you kind of have to get uncomfortable with yourself and go, how much of that is my own doing? And it's okay if you've been doing it. Just build awareness around that. Build awareness of, how am I doing that to myself, and how can I let go of that habit, of that pattern? What do I need to give myself to do differently? The other thing that it made me think of is when you put it into the perspective of this this beautiful analogy of actors and acting, right? It's being able to see the play that you are in the moment, all the characters, the scene, and everything, and recognize that part of the process of building self-awareness is being able to kind of almost freeze frame that moment, and you be the director behind the scenes, kind of looking at this and going, how could I do this scene differently? What does the character that I am playing, what does it need to say? What does it need to ask for? Oftentimes it's, when we have a complaint, there's a request that can be made. We're just not making the request, either because we're afraid to make it, we don't want to make it, or we don't realize that it's something that we can ask for. So how can you direct the script in a way that is going to be more beneficial to you? So I love that. The way that you put that analogy, I feel like is something that people can really understand.
Yeah, thank you, Margie. I think, if I want to elaborate on that, you don't like a channel, right? You have a remote in your hands. You you'll switch the channel. But when you are in the living a life and you don't like that person, or that image on the wall, whatever it is, you would need to change it so that it works for you. So it starts with being self-observant all the time. It's a practice, right? It's a continuous practice of awareness, being aware of itself, what I call. But but here is the point, though. I think what's beautiful, what I've understood from my deeper meditations, is that whatever is playing on the screen is always blank. The screen itself is blank, but the characters playing in the movie, it doesn't matter, because the screen from your eyes, whatever you're seeing, the real world, if you can understand that it is you are the screen, you're essentially the screen, and whatever is playing, enjoy it and don't get attached to it. Unless one of the characters comes back and hurts you physically, that's a different story, right? Nobody is coming and hurting you physically. But don't get carried away with the words. They may say more hurtful words. Those hurtful words are being heard by maybe two or three people around you. Why are you taking it personally? You know what I'm saying? The hurt is not in the words itself, right? The hurt is not in the words. If the hurt is in the words, everybody would have got hurt, because you are taking it personally. And if that same words would have said in different language, that doesn't mean anything to you. Even if the words which should not have been said by that person, it would not matter, because you have to leave it up to the person's, dignity of understanding or something, and leave it up to them to get better in their language, right? but don't get carried away that they judged you or something, because like I said, you are beautiful as you are. You are complete as you are. Nothing can change that unless you take those words internally and then make it a part of your life.
Yeah.
So, and I know it's not easy for a lot of people unless they go through some kind of experiences, realistically. But my point is, in this age and world, let's not go back there where generations of people suffered from the same traumas and uh, same kind of behavioral patterns in their minds, and having dreams about it, having guilty feeling about next morning is not work. Because what is happening is, it's their awareness is constantly training their subconscious to bring back that same kind of conditioning and telling them, hey, you are being judged, can you go back into suffering mode again, please? Right.
Suffering becomes comfortable. Suffering becomes comfortable. It's the thing that you know. And so that's the thing. Nobody wants to willingly suffer, but it is the comfort of the experience of suffering because you understand that feeling.
Yes.
And that's uncomfortable to hear. That's uncomfortable for people to recognize that you may not want to be in chaos. You might be saying that you want peace, but your behaviors are putting you in a place, and your thoughts are putting you in a place that is familiar. There's nothing wrong with you. It's humans. It's how we are. To get yourself out of suffering, to get yourself out of chaos, requires for you to disrupt the pattern that has been there for your life, for generations, for whatever the case may be. Doing something different, disrupting that pattern, takes a lot of effort, energy, commitment, consciousness, right? It's not easy. It can be done. You can do it. You can do it. We can all do it. But we do have to build the practice. And I feel like one of the things that I like telling my clients is, we get so frustrated when we're trying to build a new habit. It doesn't matter if it's going to the gym, flossing your teeth, whatever. And in psychology, we talk about it as being like there are 4 stages of habit forming. The first stage, when you don't know that there's even a habit, that you have no awareness over it, it's called being in the unconscious incompetent stage. And then when you become conscious of it and realize, ooh, this is something that maybe is not helping me, you move into the consciously incompetent phase. That becomes, that's a big chunk. You've been in this first stage, forever. Now you're in this stage where you're aware of it, but it's going to take you a lot of repetition. It's going to take you a lot of practice for you to build a new habit. Then you move into the conscious competence phase, right? And that's where you become more practiced. Now it's not so, it's a little bit more second nature. You still have to be paying attention to it, right? But over time, then you get to the point of mastery, which is when you become, unconsciously competent. It's that second phase where people the self-judgment is so strong because you feel like you're failing. You feel like, well, this is clearly not working. I'm just going to have to live with this. Or you also self-sabotage by justifying it and going, this is just how I am and I just can't change it. You can change it. You can change anything about yourself that matters to you. It just has to matter enough for you to want to do that. And it's heavy and hard for people to hear and understand and acknowledge, accept that this requires personal responsibility. Nobody can do this work for you. Nobody can do my work for me. We are all responsible for our own patterns, for our own consciousness, for our own behaviors, for our legacy in the world, on and on and on. It requires personal responsibility. There is no way around that. It requires personal responsibility. It requires commitment. It requires consistency. And a lot of times too, part of the self-sabotage is you may say you want something and think you want something, but there might be competing unconsciously like competing interests. And part of that is, again, practice and building awareness of like, what is my competing interest? So I'll give you an example. In the case of we're so close to the end of the year. We're all thinking about New Year's resolutions, how we want to be better next year, like all this stuff, right? And fitness is one of those things that people think about, because at least the idea of being healthy and being fit and taking care of themselves matters enough for it to be still in their, kind of like conscious thought. But then, you may be very committed for, 3 weeks, maybe even 3 months. And then after that, why? Because there are competing interests. It is either the type of exercise is not right, so you're unconsciously you're not enjoying it. You feel like this is like such a hard thing, that the emotion and the thought process behind that ends up winning if you don't have a different way of working through that, or try a different exercise, or don't exercise and go walk. Like, it could be any number of things. Sometimes we have very fixed ideas about, in this case, what fitness is, right? What exercise is. There's so many different ways of doing this and being healthy, but you have to find the one that is right for you. You can't, the competing interest is, which is the one that other people think is right? So that could be a competing interest. So just there, again, like the unconscious patterns in thoughts. When people hear like, oh, you have to take time, you have to build your awareness. How do you do that? With practice. You have to consciously think about it. And people just, the immediate thing, especially in our society today, because we think like, I don't have time to do that. It feels daunting just from the standpoint of committing time. It doesn't have to be so it doesn't have to be daunting if you start doing small things, right? Build a habit, not by throwing all of yourself into it. I'm not telling you go start journaling 12 hours a day. What's one small thing that you can do to start building your awareness? And the thing is, it's that small shift over a long period of time that's going to make the difference. And it becomes more manageable. It goes from being like, I don't have time to do this. Whenever I tell my dad this, he's like, how can you think so much? Like, that would be exhausting. At first, it might be, but then that becomes the norm. The way that you think, the way that you process things, the way that you analyze, the way that you think critically, the way that you build your consciousness becomes second nature. It becomes, you get to that unconsciously competent phase. And that's what you want, but that's going to take some time in practice. And the biggest thing is commitment. Just have to be committed to the practice.
Yes, I agree with that. I think when you said practice, right, to be able to slow down and reflect on our accomplishments this year. I mean, we are in the month of December, and then that it has to be, the thought process in everyone's mind has to be like continuous improvement, right? Slow and marginal improvement, meticulously taking steps. It is like, this is how I think of like an idea of creating an idea is like lighting a candle, and you see the small flame coming on the candle, right? And when you go to church or a temple or any place, each person passes on that candle, and then burns another candle and shares, and then you have like whole place light up with the with energy and light. So it is like that idea could come from me or you or anybody, but as long as we can share that idea and uplift each other through the positive thinking, through the positive conscious, and then relentlessly repeat, it's going to work our way. But it all comes with patience and understanding of each other, and then slowly working towards our goals.
Kalyan, this has been such a fascinating subject, and I know you and I can continue talking ad infinitum about it. But we've come to kind of like the closing part of our session today. Do you want to touch on anything, to wrap up? What do you want to leave the listeners with?
I think, Margie, over the last couple of episodes, we have touched on so much about mental health and awareness, and then also how one can self-sabotage their own patterns of thoughts. It all comes to being elevating our levels of consciousness. There is so much depth. I was telling the listeners that there is so much depth of consciousness which has not been touched by the humanity. We are, a lot of us are still going on the surface of, learning to meet our ends every day, what we call rat race or something, right? And trying to, find payments and mortgages and then living our family lives. But there is also that depth of consciousness which we need to trace. So my encouragement to the listeners is that give yourself time every day. I make it a practice of meditation 6 to 7 times a day. It doesn't have to be that much. I didn't start with 6 to 7. I started with one meditation per day. But whatever works for you, calm down and take some time to self introspection. And the self introspection does not have to be about your wealth or family or your goals or anything like that. It can be about where you are in this existence. What do you want to do with your life in the next phase of your life? If you can do that every day, leave your baggage, leave the heavy baggage what you have gathered every night, have fantastic sleep, and then come morning, every morning, come with fresh set of ideas. For me, I come with my ideas. For after every meditation, I come with an ideas. It's gonna change and open up a new dimension for me of the world. And then whether it is going for the next meeting or next work I have to do, that fresh set of ideas is giving me more clarity about my work. So take a step back, relax, and then get your fresh set of ideas going. Write that down on paper. Don't forget to write down, because it will skip your mind. So write that down and then take that idea back, put it in the water, just like I said, bring another school of fishes, and then you'll have much more ideas around, build up around that, which can fulfill your life. So have that thought of catching an idea with an idea. So I'll leave it up to that, and then we'll continue in the next episode.
I love that, and I want to say too, for those of you who are interested in the positive intelligence program that I facilitate, that's one of the things that we say is, you do have to make a commitment to practicing, but it doesn't have to be like you said, 3 hours a day, or like it could be as small as 15 minutes a day, like 5 minutes, like 3 times a day. It's building the practice. It's building a new habit. Start small. Start in a way that is manageable, a way that is bite-sized, and then work your way up. But the biggest thing is just the commitment and the consistency. And then after that, you can figure out like, what is the next thing for me? So this has been another wonderful conversation and exchange, Kalyan. Thank you so much for all of your input. I feel like you and I always have so many great things to talk about, in different perspectives and different ways of looking at it. And I'm sure that the listeners can hear how we're talking about the same thing, but we also talk about it differently, or have different experiences that have led us to this place where we both are, and help us to help our clients to grow themselves in different ways and with different skills and with different tools. And I love that. Thank you for joining us. And we are looking forward to having you on the next podcast. Remember to tune in on Wednesday at 1:00. We look forward to getting your comments or any questions, getting your input on what you took away from this session today. And again, make sure to find us on social media, follow us, and connect with us. And we will talk to you next time.
Thanks, everyone.